Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and, I'm supposed to record this whenever I write a new newsletter, but clearly I haven't been doing so, but nevertheless, that means that I've got plenty of test stuff for something that I would like to test. So this is partially a test and partially something about better user interfaces in cars changing radio listening, which I wrote on the 23rd of October. So if I don't really know what I'm reading, that's probably why. A fascinating bit of data from Edison Research came out then, showing the effect of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on car audio listening. It seems that AM/FM is still the number one source, but total listening goes down by a third if you have CarPlay or Android Auto. Everything else doubles: music streaming, podcasts, all of that kind of stuff. It's the effect of a decent user experience, of course. If you make it simpler to listen to other things, people will. It's why things like Radio Player that aim to make a decent user experience for all of radio are so important. As a case in point, I was in Adelaide over the weekend. The hire car had Android Auto in it, and I didn't listen to the radio once. I just asked YouTube Music to play music from my mix, and it did. How did that compare with the radio? Well, we did some listening in a cafe, Power FM I think it was, but on a Sunday morning it was just non-stop music, punctuated by one quite eager local news bulletin and a number of commercials. And non-stop music really isn't much of an alternative to my mix, which is also non-stop music, but the music that I like. Radio's selling point, a shared experience and a human connection, is important here, you'd think. Now, in Australia, some interesting corporate manoeuvrings as ARN launches a hostile takeover bid of its competitor SCA. The broadcast radio market is worth 1.7 billion Australian dollars, which is 1.1 billion US dollars. And this would be the equivalent, I guess, of Bauer trying to take over Global or Audacy taking over iHeart. There's a phrase that has aged considerably badly. Anyway, the radio ownership rules in Australia allow for analogue radio, one company, to own two radio stations in each broadcast area. I link to the Brisbane RA1, the licence area for Brisbane, and the Ipswich RA1, the one for Ipswich, and most of the city of Ipswich is in the Brisbane area as well. So when ARN bought Grants a few years ago, the Ipswich station, River 94.9, meant that they had to sell a station in Brisbane. And if ARN is successful in taking over SCA, of course, they'll have four stations in many areas. So the plan there is to have two broadcast radio companies run separately in much the same way that Global and Communicorp exist. But that regulatory requirement isn't relevant for streaming or for DAB+ or for podcasting. And looking at the recent Australian podcast ranker, ARN and SCA represent 69% of all podcast downloads in Australia. That's quite the behemoth. So I don't really understand whether the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, would have the same concerns as the UK's CMA, but it's certainly interesting times for the industry ahead. In other news, Eric Newsom has written a content strategy for US public radio, 3 strategies actually. It's worth a read. You'll find it linked in our show notes and our newsletter. In South Africa, happy 30th birthday to the NAB. I was honoured to speak at the NAB's 30th anniversary event via my home office. The deeply unsatisfactory result of the Voice to Parliament referendum in Australia led to the presenter of Triple J's Blackout, which is a show playing Indigenous artists, to make a protest speech and then play the same song for an hour. That was promoted on the ABC's website. And think of how that would have gone down at the BBC. And Sean Ross suggests that the first thing that US radio must fix is the ad load. I'm always mystified why US radio doesn't understand how much to charge for its airtime. It says here, coming up, I'm speaking at the following events, which I will skip past because all of those were in October and November, and it is no longer October and November, I'll tell you that. Supporters at the point that I wrote this were, thank you to Broadcast Radio, Clyde Broadcast, Richard Hilton and James Masterton, Brun Audio Consulting, Soma FM and Media Realms Meta Radio. If you'd like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland, I believe. You can also follow me on Mastodon. I'm James at bne.social there. And my professional website has more detail about who I am and what I do. and whether I can help you further. You can hear this newsletter being read to you on a podcast player near you, it says. Gosh, you've been listening. You've been waiting for a long time. Just search for James Cridland Radio Futurologist. Well, that's this anyway. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that was good. Sorry it was about 6 months too late. October, November, December, January. Okay, 3 months too late. But anyway, at least this gives me a chance to test a number of things. So we'll do that, and I'll speak to you again soon, and keep listening.